Hello, everybody. Welcome to One Man, One Mic. Not really going to do a big intro here, but this is my brother. He is current and probably future co-host going forward, and I am the person you've already seen in the other 12 or 15 videos or whatever it's been now.
You'll probably like me more.
No need for introduction. Gonna give 10 seconds of backstory here. We spent 2 hours recording a draft special prior to the draft, where we went through all 32 picks. We actually did this 1.5 times due to some technical difficulties, and the new audio recording software that I use did not properly save all of our footage, so basically we wasted 2 hours. So our introduction, our return basically to the platform was supposed to be like 2.5 weeks ago, but because of technical difficulties and that's how things go, we are starting back today. So today we are going to be talking about a topic I referenced a couple months ago to do a bigger show on, and today's actually going to be, I'm going to call it my first episode that's not strictly sports. This is going to be kind of on a branch off in video games. Still a sports video game, but more or less, if you don't play video games, this video is not going to interest you in particular. So today we're going to be talking about something that just about anybody and everybody that loves American football has played a Madden NFL game, and just about anybody and everybody that's liked playing Madden NFL games has had some sort of gripe or complaint about them in the last 5 to 10 years. So today we're going to be talking about 10 ways to fix the Madden Franchise Mode. Now, I focus on the Madden franchise here because, in my opinion, any real gamer for Madden is there for the franchise mode. If you're there to play Ultimate Team or online with your friends, I'm not talking to you because nothing's changed. You can still do that. It's just still getting the same product. It's the franchise mode that has deteriorated and
stagnated.
Yeah, it's like
hasn't changed in
me personally.
10 years,
I've came around for just the franchise mode for 20 years now. I've been playing since Madden '98, and they didn't have a franchise mode back then. But that's what I've been here for now, ever since Madden 05, and I've watched it get progressively. It got progressively better and better for about a 5 or 6 year span, and then it's kind of hit a cliff. And now they've kind of got this motive now where they take away all these great features that you like, and they kind of like to reintroduce them one by one every couple years as a quote-unquote new feature. And so basically, I'm going to reference it a lot, but games like Madden 2005, 2008, 2010, these are games that do the franchise mode better than the newer games do. And so we're going to kind of go through a 1 through 10 list here. He has not seen or heard any of these 10, except for I think 1 or 2 we briefly discussed. So he's going to be 100% candid reactions here. So if he doesn't agree with anything that I'm saying, he will let you know. And obviously, if he wants to add anything past these 10 or add anything to these 10, then we're going to go from there. So buckle your seatbelts. We're going to start this ride, and hopefully this one gets saved and gets posted. Otherwise, I'm wasting my breath again. But so
yeah, don't like wasting my breath.
No, but so number one thing, and this is personally one of the things that I'm really, really invested in when it comes to any sports game, really, but it's particular games, is I would like to see a more detailed player stats and player information on your franchise mode. Now, by that I mean, if you look back at, say, Madden 10, and I'm probably going to put some screenshots up on the screen in the video somewhere, so you'll see kind of what I'm talking about. But if you look back at like Madden 10, Madden 05, you will see little things, and by player stats, I'm not even talking like anything wild, or player info, I'm not talking anything wild. It's little things like, how did you acquire that player? And like if you pull up Madden 10 and you pull up, I don't know, let's see who's moved, Donovan McNabb. You pull up Donovan McNabb, actually probably would have been Madden 11 for him. But if you were to pull him up for at the time the Redskins, and you went into his info, there would be something that said acquired by or whatever, and it would say trade with Philadelphia. And little things like that are just little details that they used to have, and there's no reason that they shouldn't have them now. And I think it's kind of almost like a world building thing, which kind of sounds stupid in a sports simulator game. But like if you've got this player and he's kind of like a journeyman, it's interesting to see like, okay, this guy's in his 13th year, he's a quarterback, and I acquired him from free agency or something, and then you can look back and see, okay, he's been with 9 different teams. He's Ryan Fitzpatrick, you know.
See, I haven't played the newest games. The last time game I played was 2019.
Yeah.
Which I enjoyed, but it was kind of stagnated. To me, it was the same as 2016, which is the one or 2017, which I think was the one I played
very
previously.
minuscule differences, yeah.
I kind of wholeheartedly agree on this. Mm-hmm. I probably played Madden 10 the most of my life.
Yeah, it was second most for me, behind 05, so.
Yeah, and some of the features that were in that game just aren't in the newer games. They just aren't there.
And it's, like I said, it's little things, too, because up until, like, when you played Madden 19, you couldn't even see what team your player played for. Like, when you looked at stats, it would just show the year and their stats. And then I did not play Madden 20, so it could have been Madden 20 they added it, or it could have been this newer version 21. But now they finally brought that back, but it's another thing, like, why did it have to go away? Like, I'm not super knowledgeable when it comes to coding and stuff like that. I have taken a couple computer programming classes, but I can tell you it cannot be that hard to code some abbreviations on a stat sheet. So what was the point of getting rid of it in the first place is beyond me, because it was something that you can go back and play Madden 2004 and it'll show you what team they played for every year they were in the league, and then all of a sudden one day it disappeared. And so, that's just the tip of the iceberg, and that's just really info. And that can go into coaches too, because if you pull up, once again, like Madden 10 or even Madden 05, and look at, Andy Reid, you could actually look at him as a coach, not just that one little coach stat screen they have in the franchise now, and you could look at him as a coach, and it would tell you how many Super Bowls he has, what years he was with what teams, and what job title he held. Like, defense coordinator, offense coordinator, 1988, 1989, whatever it was. And you could, see a whole detailed history. And once again, it's kind of like
you can invest into your...
Yeah.
You can invest into your training staff in those games, reduce injuries on your team.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can still do that in the modern games. I don't remember ever having it.
You can't really, and that's another topic I'm going to get with later. But, yeah, I mean, you could kind of see more or less the history on these guys. And you could even, and like I said, I'll touch on it more later, but these coaches, you could bring a coach from special teams to offensive coordinator, defense coordinator to head coach. It wasn't just like it is now, where it's head coach, and then you can sign like a conditioning trainer, and then there's a scout, and that's it. There's no coordinators and nothing like that. And I'll just get into it now because we're already talking about it a little bit here. But there should be more hiring control when it comes to your coaches now. Because the most common thing you'll see in real life NFL is when a head coach position opens up, who's the most likely candidate to get it? It's either going to be a head coach that was recently fired, or most likely fired, but somebody's recently fired, somebody that's hot coming out of college, or a coordinator. You'll see these guys like Robert Saleh just got a job, and
Cliff Kingsbury,
yes, and Sean McVay was an offensive coordinator. You see these guys that were coordinators, they get promoted up to head coaches. That's something you can go back and play Madden 2005, and in the offseason, you hired coaches to fill your positions. You hired defensive coordinators, offensive coordinators, head coaches, special teams. Once again, why the lack of detail in that has disappeared? To me, it's just laziness. And it's also if you're more realistic with the game. So, for example, if you were, if you were the Chiefs, and you actually had Eric Bieniemy as an offensive coordinator in the next Madden game, you could promote him to head coach, or another team could sign him the next offseason, and the game would be more realistic instead of it being the same 10 created head coaches they've recycled for 5 years now. that, don't have any backstory.
Come on, no, you don't like New England coach?
Yeah, Griffin Murphy, isn't that his name?
I think that's the name they
yeah,
eventually
the name
gave
they
him.
just made up with, yeah. But, they have these same made up guys, and it's another thing that it's so. I mean, you don't have to. The first year that they would make this change, I'm not expecting, at least me personally, I'm not expecting it to be like you have their schemes down and their substitutions and all this. I'm not expecting you to get the coordinators down to a T, but at least feature them in the game. You already have the rights to the NFL Coaches Association. Everybody is involved with it, which is why Belichick's not in it, because he's not part of it. So, you already have an agreement with the NFL Coach Association to involve them in the game, and that includes the coordinators. They're part of the Coach Association as well. So there's no reason not to include them in the game, to the point where you could just, hire and fire them at will and promote them and, see your guys get taken from you. It happened. You could play NCAA 14, which I was not long ago. And every offseason, some new college is signing your offensive coordinators and signing your defensive coordinators and signing your...
Worst.
Yeah, it is
the worst.
You have to recycle them every year. But, that's NCAA 14. That's a game that's 8 years old now almost. And Madden still is not doing that. They were doing it at one point, but somewhere along the lines, they decided this is too detailed for us, and they cut it out.
You have a little more familiarity with this than I do. I haven't played as a owner in a Madden game in probably since 2016.
Yeah.
Can you still hire retired players to be head coaches? Because that used to be a thing back in the day. Like Ray Lewis would retire, and then 2 years later he'd be a high head coach or defensive coordinator position, and it'd be nice to see like the legends recycled back in instead of just having the random generic guys who have no character. You have no connection to them. Yeah, even if like let's say you signed Ray Lewis as your head coach, you might not be attached to him, like his playbook or anything. You just want him there, and that's just it's a I don't know the best way to explain it, but it's you want to see that. You want to see the legacy and the real life brought in more than just the animated, like the created people. That's the reason why most Madden franchises, at least that I've done, stop when all of the created all the people in the franchise are basically just created players. The only people that would be left are kickers and punters. That's about it.
Yeah, well, and see, like I don't even mind that. Like once you get 10 to 15 years in, and all the created guys are in, a lot of those guys you've drafted and scouted, and you've kind of built this guy yourself. I mean, even if it is some random generated guy that's in a draft class, if he was a fifth round guy that you snagged and made into a superstar, you can kind of have that attachment to that player, which is, it's the reason to keep it going.
Yeah,
when I played Madden 19, when I finally decided to stop my franchise was after one of the guys I drafted the first year I was in the franchise finally retired, because I was trying to catch Jerry Rice and pass his wide receiving records, and this guy played 17 seasons as a wide receiver, and unfortunately I finished about one season short on all of his stats. But
could you still coax players out of retirement like in the old games?
Never really could.
Yeah, because in the old games you used to be able to like kind of sort of try to get them to come back, but
there's never been like a option to talk them out of it. Like there was in college football games, there was a option to talk them out of
go to the NFL draft. Yeah,
but there's not one of those in the NFL, which is another thing I'm going to talk about here shortly. But not to get too far away from it, but going back to detailed player stats and info. So info I've already kind of got into, but when I talk about player stats, there's a couple other things that I think are very crucial that kind of could put more investment in the game and kind of make it more. So what I'm trying to look for here. Can't think of the word, but things like playoff stats. Madden does not have any playoff stats. Like, basically any stats you put up in the playoffs don't matter. Like, you could draft a quarterback the first year and light it up in the playoffs every single year, and nowhere does his playoff stats get recorded. Guys like Tom Brady, all the playoff stats he has, Madden doesn't acknowledge that they even exist. And I'm not expecting those to be combined with regular season stats or anything, but you can look at games like NBA, 2K. They have a playoff stats category. I believe NHL has a playoff stats category that's separate from regular. So once again, it's a situation where why doesn't Madden have something like this? Why don't you record playoff stats? Because that's another thing that if you're invested in a franchise, that's another thing you can look at when making player decisions in the future. Like if you've got a wide receiver who's got a big contract coming up, maybe he's at the end of his rookie deal, and you look and he's got stats in the regular season, but you look at his playoff stats and he seems to just step up and he doesn't drop the ball and he's got a lot of touchdowns. It's incentive to keep your guy. But right now, I don't remember the last playoff game I even played. I don't remember the stats. I don't remember nothing because it's not important. Like, that's just kind of how the game treats it is, you made the playoffs, congratulations. We're not going to record anything you do from here except for win-loss record. And even win-loss record, they don't record it for individual players. They just record it for your coach. So they'll be like, okay, your coach is 7-2 in the playoffs, but nowhere does that matter when it comes to your quarterback, when it comes to any of your players. And that's another thing you could look at when deciding with player decisions in the future. If you've got a quarterback that puts up great regular season stats, but then you can flip over and look at a playoff tab, and he's 1-6 record in the playoffs.
Maybe his accuracy is off. Maybe he gets the tighter coverage to get both better defenses in the playoffs. Maybe he's not that good.
Exactly. So that could be a reason to make a real decision on okay, do I want to sign this guy to a huge deal, or do I want to trade him away and make some changes, because he's obviously not the key to winning playoff games. I've done it before, just kind of after my own logic and my own memory of being okay, it seems like when I get to the playoffs, the quarterback's inaccurate. He's fumbling it a lot, things like that. And that's another thing. Little stats like fumbles and interceptions in the playoffs add up, and you might not remember them if you manage to overcome it and still win the Super Bowl or whatever. But if you look back and go, damn, my quarterback fumbled it 7 times in a one game or a one playoff run, that's a fucking problem.
Or if a specific lineman gets a holding penalty at the 1-yard line to lose you a Super Bowl against my brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like that.
I don't know about all that.
Yeah, that was very bad. Fuck you, Larry Tunsil.
That was a good day. But yeah, detailed player stats is just something that, to me, it makes it kind of more encompassing when you're playing the game. It had kind of makes it feel like, even though you're not stupid enough to know that anything you're doing matters in the game, at least if you're invested in a franchise and you have 3 or 4 people that are in the franchise with you, you kind of feel like when you're making these decisions, it's better and easier when you have more of a history to look at. And like I said, playoff stats also matter though. There should be categories when you look at playoff stats and be like, oh, Tom Brady has the most playoff passing yards. He's got fucking 25,000 or whatever. And, you should be able to look at that, and then that could be a goal you set. Okay, if I'm going to make it to the Super Bowl every year, depending on how good you are at the game, I make it to the Super Bowl just about every year, unless some crazy shit happens in the playoffs. But if you make it to the Super Bowl every year, you can kind of look back after 10 years of doing that and be like, I wonder how many passing yards I have with this guy. I wonder how many rushing yards I have with this running back. I wonder how many receiving yards my wide receiver has. And you can kind of compare yourself against the other playoff greats. And that could be a catalyst for when the game decides to do its Hall of Fame thing, because there are certain NFL players that are in the Hall of Fame strictly on playoff stats alone, and Madden doesn't care about that. So if you were a 2-time Pro Bowler and had a very mediocre regular season career, your guy's not going to be eligible for the Hall of Fame.
So what I'm hearing here is the Julian Edelman argument.
Julian Edelman, Terrell Davis, those guys that were playoff guys, and that's about it.
Yep, that's the argument that I was expecting. You can only really make an argument for Julian Edelman or Terrell Davis off of postseason stats. Terrell Davis, he had a good short career, but short career doesn't amount to much if you don't have the back end.
And you got to think almost a third of his yards came in one season. Yeah. So of his entire career, he ran for 2,000.
It was a hell of a year. I'm not gonna discredit him. He was a great back when he was healthy.
He had a great. I think it was a 3-year stretch. He went 1,800,
2,000,
1,600, and 2,000. I think it was. It was a great 3-year stretch. But that was a 3-year stretch. So Ezekiel Elliott had a good 3-year stretch to start his career, but it was a 3-year stretch.
Yep.
So, but that pretty much wraps up player stats. But that's one of the main things that I want to see changed is just And like I said, it's little changes. There's no reason you can't have it added to the game. And it's something that, I mean, I'm sure these coders that get paid who knows how much money by EA, they could do this in a weekend, code these little numbers and stats and add them in, just make the game a little bit more, realistic, in my opinion.
Do you have player development on your list?
No.
Okay. Because I noticed this when I was watching you. Player development, I think, is worse in the newest game, the newest couple games. Because I want to say it was back in 2017. You could upgrade individual stats on a player.
Yeah,
now they came with its own upsides and downsides, because you could just upgrade awareness, get somebody's overall awareness and player recognition on defense mainly, get the overall really high, and the trade value's good, and it kind of broke the system, which is why they probably did what they did. But the problem with that is it kind of took away the traits aspect of it. Like, are you going to cover ball every time? Are you going to do this or that?
That's the thing. Now, in these new Madden games, you can't even upgrade that.
Yeah,
your traits you're stuck with whatever you get when you start.
Yeah, which sometimes is good and sometimes bad. Like, back then, something I always hated is there's a trait that was supposed to be the best trait, which was fight for more yards. Oh. But the problem with that as a running back, and especially as a receiver, you fumble far more often because your player is always trying to stretch the ball out, and all it takes is one hand. And I've noticed they've taken that away, so you no longer have the ability. Like, if at the end of the year, the guy might upgrade it. If the guy makes like a Pro Bowl or something, he might just upgrade it naturally. It might regress. You never know. But that's a thing I noticed, that you're taking a little bit of the freedom away just to make the system a little more balanced. Well, maybe the system should just be balanced instead of taking freedom away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was a small little gripe I had with the game. It didn't take away from my overall enjoyment of it, but I did much prefer the older system. That older system. There's far older ones than that.
Yeah, no, I don't really put too much on the development, because I think out of all the things that the game needs to improve, it's on the back burner of what needs to be improved. I mean, I don't like that they went away from individual attributes that you can upgrade, but I mean, I see the benefits of the way they do it now.
Make more balanced players over just arm strength and
I see
our accuracy as a quarterback.
The reason they changed it now is because it's supposed to fit your scheme. So if you have a scheme that relies on a big-bodied physical wide receiver, it will upgrade a package of traits that benefit a physical wide receiver, instead of you just being like, oh, well, I want to upgrade this and this and this, and then all of a sudden your receiver doesn't fit the scheme because you're not upgrading the proper traits. Now, they could do it where they kind of make it a mixture where, you can upgrade individual traits and it will tell you what fits your scheme. So, like, hey, if you upgrade these things, it'll make your receiver a better physical receiver. And, I mean, being a physical receiver, a lot of it's not exactly rocket science of what you need to upgrade to, do that. It's jumping, it's, strength, it's, awareness upgrades on everybody. Catching...
contested catches.
Yeah.
It was spectacular catches, I think, is the other one.
I mean, these are things that, obviously, and I think even for some of them, things like trucking are added on there for physical receivers and breaking tackles. But, those are the things that, as a physical receiver, you need to upgrade. But not everybody knows that. So there might be some people that are building on acceleration and speed, and they're really going away from what a physical receiver would be, so it doesn't fit their scheme. Sometimes the schemes are bullshit, and you can have whatever receiver you want anyway, and it doesn't matter. But sometimes the schemes do help if you have players that fit your scheme. So, who knows? But yeah, I didn't really have development on here because, like I said, I felt like it was more on the back burner of the problems they have to fix.
For me, it was just a minor gripe. I felt like it kind of needed to be said. It's just I prefer the freedom in my character development.
Yeah.
If it's a created people or a creative person, comes in from the draft or whatever, I feel like at that point it's blank slate for me to choose. He might start out with superstar development or slow development. That's not up to me. Yeah, but everything else I feel like I should have some say in it over time.
Yeah, they got rid of slow development too. There's no such thing as that anymore. So
thank God, it was horrible.
Everybody comes in as normal, normal or better. Which, I mean, in some ways, slow development being gone is good, because once you had somebody that was slow, it was damn near impossible to get them out of it.
Yep, they'd have to win the Rookie of the Year or something their first year to have any
Yeah,
chance.
and you have to commit an absurd amount of XP to get them from slow.
Yep.
That is one of the things I do like about the new Madden game is that they will give you tasks mid-season that if your specific player completes it, they can upgrade the development trait. So if you have like a hot wide receiver who's had a few good games and he's let's say a normal development, you'll get a message that'll say, hey, it's a message from the player. This is, hey, I want to be a big part of the offense this week. And it'll tell you, like, hey, get this player 125 yards and 3 touchdowns to upgrade the development. And then if you manage to get that player those stats, they get bumped up to a star. And so that's something I do like, is that, it gives you a chance. So they could technically do the slow development still and just give you that opportunity. Like, hey, if they're outperforming what the development says, they'll give you tasks to where you can potentially get that person to that. My only gripe with that is, from what I've noticed, a lot of these tasks they will give you are really obnoxious. Like, they'll give you quarterback tasks. It'll be like, oh, you need to upgrade your quarterback's development. And it'll be like, get them 350 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and no turnovers. And it's just like, okay, sometimes that's no problem. But sometimes you but having no turnovers is really tricky because sometimes it's completely out of your control.
Sometimes you get that random Madden bullshit where the linebacker jumps 15 feet in the air and picks off whatever the hell's near him.
Yeah, that too. And sometimes there's things such as, the ball gets snapped to you and your line completely breaks down and you get sacked before you can even get third step in your drop, and it's a strip sack. And nothing you can do about that. Quarterback still had a good day, but offensive line fails. So, but yeah, I'm not going to get too much in development, but yeah, it's definitely something that could be improved and tweaked on, but it's something at the same time that I don't think is absolutely necessary for the game to be better from year to year.
All right, what's next then?
So next for me, and this is just a kind of minor one, but I would like to see more details and more kind of a broader stroke on who's classified as the legends of the game. Because since like Madden 25, I want to say was the first one that they introduced it with Barry Sanders on the cover, they've had a legacy leaderboard that you can compare yourself to legends, and it kind of tells you what they've accomplished and Pro Bowls and all that. And it seems like every year that Madden goes by, less and less notable faces are on that leaderboard. It'll be like John Madden, you'll have like Jerry Rice, you'll have like Barry Sanders and Walter Payton, and then it's then it's kind of like a sprinkle of random players, and that's it. There's never any Randy Moss, Terrell Owens. You never have legendary linemen on there like
John Hanna,
Orlando Pace. You never have those guys on there. And once again, I don't think there's any reason that you can't have those guys. I mean, I don't know because they're retired if there's like gray area there that could be involved, but I'm sure a lot of these guys, if you're going to give them a paycheck, they'll be like, sure, use my likeness in the game. And you already include their stats and stuff on when you look at all-time stats, so you're already including them in one way or another.
They 100% can use them because even though I don't play it, in the Madden Ultimate Team, they have like legends that come out. They'll have like Night Train Lane and stuff in there, and he'll be 99 overall, but it's like if he should be higher up on that list if he's a 99 overall legend.
And that's the thing, they completely leave out a lot of these guys, and it'll be to the point where if you have a wide receiver that has 3 good seasons to start his career and wins 2 Super Bowls, he's the number 1 wide receiver of all time. And it's just, to me, it's kind of lazy. Like, it's not that hard for you to just go back and look at the top 5 of every position and at least put them on there. You don't have to have a detailed list of 30 guys, but, you should at least have the 5 greatest quarterbacks or whatever.
5 best coaches.
5 running backs, 5 coaches, 5 offensive linemen, defensive linemen, linebackers. You should have Ray Lewis on the list and guys like Dick Butkus and Mike Singletary and Ham and
Ray Lewis,
Lambert, and you should have all these guys on there. But the game just doesn't seem to involve any of that. And it's just kind of lazy programming in my opinion. If you're going to include the legacy leaderboard, at least put some effort into it. It's a different story if you want it to be a completely built legacy from your own franchise. Then just don't include anybody on there. Have it be a clean slate. And then, start it with the guys who are active. So you like Tom Brady would be number 1, he's active. And then after that, clean slate after that. But don't include guys like John Madden and Peyton Manning and guys like that on the list if you're not going to actually include guys that are just as worthy to be on that leaderboard as they are, but you were too lazy to think about them. Especially if you're going to put those same players in Madden Ultimate Team and give them really high overalls so they can boost their team. It's like, well, you're showing them recognition in one way, but you completely ignore them in another way.
Hey, Darren, you should be happy at least. Every year in Madden Ultimate Team, Brian Dawkins is always the most feared player for Halloween.
He should be. He's an animal.
He used to play the mobile game, and every year it felt like he would be the most feared guy. I got him like 3 years in a row, so that was pretty good.
Yeah, I like to see Legends, and the other thing, which is something that I have had a gripe with for fucking 20 years with Madden, and it's so lazy, and there's no reason you can't do it. Why the fuck do we not have retired numbers yet?
Oh god, yes.
It is so stupid. The NHL games have retired numbers. Basketball games have retired numbers. Baseball games have retired numbers. Why is it so goddamn hard for you to just go in and program, hey, number 13 on the Dolphins, you cannot have a player select that. 34 on the Bears, nobody can wear that. You know, it's not that hard. You can have a page, and I personally would love to see it where you can choose to retire numbers. If you have a player that is a really big legend on your team, you can give them the honor of retiring them. But I'm not even going to ask for that. Just make sure that the fucking legends on these teams cannot have their numbers worn by random Bobby Joe who gets drafted in the 7th round, and it's your 6th-string cornerback, and he wants to wear Jim Brown's number 32. Like, it's so stupid. There's no reason after all these years you cannot make anything. EA, NHL games have retired numbers. That's the same fucking company. It's a different developer. EA Montreal does NHL. But, it's the same publisher, and you can't even do that for probably one of your higher selling games. I guarantee Madden sells more than NHL does.
Yeah, the only one that probably sells more is FIFA.
Which I've even heard the last few FIFA games have dipped in quality.
Yeah, it's because it's the same thing. It's the Ultimate Team and all that. It's where they put the focus into.
But, it's so annoying. And I'm somebody that I like to try to keep the game as real and try not to break that immersion. That's the word I was looking for earlier, immersion. I try to keep it, as immersive as possible. So I will go in and do the due diligence myself and make sure none of these teams have fucking players. Like, it'll annoy me when I'll week 3 of the season and I'll go play the fucking Packers and their quarterback's wearing a number 4, and I'm like, God damn it, really? Like, can you guys not make it so that can't happen? Why is that so hard?
Come on, Darren. That's the reason they changed the number rule, and now everybody can wear whatever the hell they want, basically.
I don't care about that. I think it's annoying to do that too, but I don't care. Like, if
that's gonna be annoying as hell.
It's still something where you can wear whatever single digit you want as long as it's not a retired single digit. Like, that's just simple, logic. And like I said, I would like to see them take it a step further. And if you have a quarterback that's on your team for 20 years and he wins you 4 Super Bowls and wins a few MVPs, and you decide as the owner of the team or whatever that you want to give them the honor of retiring them retiring their number after they retire, I think you should be able to go on a page and be like, you know what, number 22 is no longer accessible because this running back was so great or whatever. But if that's not going to be what you do, that's fine with me. Just make it to where these legends of the game are not being constantly disrespected by having every player that fucking takes the roster. When I'm in a franchise with the Eagles, literally every running back or defensive back I sign gets stuck with 20 right away. I'm like, okay, well, you can't wear fucking 20, so let's go find you another number. It's like, it's obnoxious, and there's no reason for it, especially when the game, if I go play at Raymond James Stadium in the game, you can fucking see their Ring of Honor and see the numbers and the players that are retired, and yet you don't pay attention to that in the game's details. I can see number 40, Mike Allstott, up in the stands, but yet they're fullback and we're number 40. And it's like, why? Why do you take the detailed? Why do you take the time to detail that in the stadium, but you won't even take the time to make sure that number cannot be worn in the game? Like, it's a huge immersion breaker for me. And like I said, I don't plan on playing Madden for immersion, but it's just one of those things. If I'm invested in a franchise, the least they could do is make it to where, hey, these great players, you can't wear that number. And it's been 20 years, and I've been waiting on them to get it right, and they still haven't got it right in Madden. That's one of the things every year when a new Madden game comes out, and I mean, if I happen to get it, I'm at this point I'm getting one every 2 or 3 years. I don't even buy 21. It was bought for me, but if I'm getting to the point where I'm buying it every 2 or 3 years, I'm kind of expecting like, hey, maybe they've made some changes, and that's one of the first things I always look for. Is like, hey, is there retired numbers yet? No, there's not. We don't want to do that. That would be too smart.
See, I don't believe it was in the last game I played, 2019, but did they ever add back in that you can choose who your captains are in your team?
Yes.
Okay, because that was a big thing back in the day. I would, there'd be a year where, all the captains would be set my first year, because that's whatever the hell it was. Tom Brady, you'd have Dante Hightower or whatever, then Gostkowski and stuff like that on the Patriots. And then the next year, maybe Brady would retire or Gostkowski would leave or something. And I would always try to find out, who the next captain was. And it would always be, okay, my quarterback's going to be one of them. Whoever my middle linebacker is going to be another. Or if a player steps up huge, they'd be the guy. I don't remember that being in 2019. Schrader would have been good there. Yeah. He would have been my captain. He was the He was the general on my defense.
It was in 2019. It kind of flew under the radar.
Was it only a head coach thing, or could you do it as a owner? I didn't remember it.
You can do it as an owner and a head coach, but yeah, it was involved in 19. It just wasn't as prevalent. It's one of those things where when you pull up their stats, it just kind of falls in all the things, and there'll be like a little one right in the middle that says like set as captain or remove as captain. Because if you don't set them, they'll set random players for you as your captains, which is usually just like the most
high overall players on your team,
basically, or either that or the most veteran players on your team, the senior players. Which sometimes that's right, sometimes it's not. But yeah, they have done that to where you can even get the captain's patch on the jersey now when you pick somebody. So I mean, they went somewhere good with detail on that. But once again, I would much
man of the year patches. It's a big detail, or like small detail, but I hope they have the Man of the Year patches on people that actually have won it.
I don't think they do. But it might be something to do with the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. They might not have the rights to use that, so I don't know because it's
doubt
separate.
they would, but
yeah, and there's no reason to do. You can never award that award to anybody in a Madden game, so they wouldn't have any reason to feature that. I don't think.
It's just a little legacy thing, Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, so. Retired jerseys, I mean, come on, guys. I live 2 hours from Orlando where EA Tiburon develops these games. I will drive to Orlando and fix this game for you. Put fucking retired numbers in the game.
You will show up with a list and figure out how to code them away.
Every single player that's got a retired jersey in the entire NFL. I can name most of them off the top of my head. The Bears, maybe not. They have 18. But, most teams, I can go right down the line and tell you whose jersey should not be worn. And I mean, there are some teams that do the Ring of Honor, like the Cowboys and Raiders, so they don't actually retire the number, they just pass them along. But there are other teams that they're actually retired. You cannot wear this jersey. And you just let them wear it all willy-nilly. So number 4, another small one, don't have to get too detailed on it, but I would like to see some sort of off-season training camp return.
Oh, God, yes.
Now, this can be done in 2 ways. One, you can do it like they did in the old Madden games where there's actual drills you could run with players and try to score, precision drills and catching drills.
Pocket presence and stuff like that.
Kick return drills. You can do these things.
That damn passing when you throw the fucking hoop.
Yeah,
that was so bad. It was so it sucked so much.
But you can do it that way where you can select a player and select a drill and have them increase between 1 and 5 attribute points or whatever. Or you can take the route that NCAA did, where every offseason, right before you started the preseason or whatever, all your players would automatically be upgraded as long as they weren't a rookie. So you would see oh, this guy had a 4 overall boost, and it shows you the stats that he upgraded in. And, oh, this guy's old, he dropped this many. So you could do that where you don't have to run the drills, it just kind of does it for you. But, I mean, me personally, that was part of my childhood, is nostalgia. I like running the drills and, improving players and doing things along those natures. But at the same time, you can make that an option, and if you don't want to do that, just have it be simulated, handled by the computer. But I think there should be something in the offseason where your players will improve, because you'll have players that will downgrade. They'll turn 30, they'll go from 29 to 30, and you'll see them drop 2 overall, but nobody ever upgrades in the offseason. And I think that that's something like in real life, the NFL players work hard in the offseason. A lot of them become much better in the offseason, and I think that should reflect in Madden as well. So you should either be able to do it yourself through drills or do it yourself through, some sort of simulation to where it says, hey, these guys have worked better. And their development can go into that as well. Like, hey, if they're a superstar development in the offseason, they might improve 4 overall in the offseason, as to where somebody that's a normal development might improve 1 overall in the offseason.
Not to piggyback off of what you just said a little bit right there, Darian, but when you were talking about age, that is something I really would like for them to change in the game. The age regression in the game is a little bit too steep.
Oh, it is, yeah.
As soon as you hit 30 years old, your cornerbacks are bad. They start going slow.
Your running back is slow.
Their acceleration, it takes a hit. They lose all of the important stats for skill positions. Linemen can kind of hold up, but they're a little different. But any skill position player just straight up loses. And I get it. It's supposed to be an immersion thing. And at 30 years old, most cornerbacks and running backs are out of the league. I get it. But it shouldn't be as drastic as it is. These are still top-level athletes. And most, barring injury, don't drop off that sharply.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe if you'd have something in there, it's like if the guy is repeatedly injured or something like that, it just, it would happen more often. But it gets a little annoying having to draft a cornerback in the game, first round, every 3 years, because by the time that one gets developed up, the one you drafted previously is starting to decline. It gets really annoying. Very rarely you'll get 2 that'll come out of one draft, or you sign one, or something like that. But most of the time, I spend a first round pick every 3 years on a cornerback, and it gets extremely annoying trying to get a new one.
Yeah, I mean definitely the age drop off is a little obnoxious, and at the same time, it's not obnoxious for quarterback positions. Stuff like quarterback,
35 and barely regressing a little.
Yeah, they changed that a few years ago because people were tired of Tom Brady, and Peyton Manning retired after 1 year.
Yep.
So they would change that to where people will actually play longer now, per se. But that's still an in theory thing. Your quarterbacks will play until they're 41, but your receivers still want to retire at 33. Your running backs still want to retire at 32. Your offensive linemen retire at 34 or 35 at the most. So it's the quarterback position will extend into the 40s, and so will the kickers and punters. But it's still every other position is mid-30s. I've regressed. My development's dropped. My speed and awareness have dropped, and now I'm useless. So I'm going to retire. Even when you have guys that are still being productive, the game will just say, we're going to retire because they're too old now. So I would like to see the same. I'd like to see the age kind of fix that a little bit better and make it a little bit more balanced, so that there's not just you've hit this age, you're automatically useless.
Yeah, it's not as much that you're regressing. Age is a natural thing in the league. We've all seen it happen where a player just loses a step and then they can't compete anymore. It happens. But it's more so that you'll have a player in the competition for Defensive Player of the Year, or one of those random cornerback of the year or something like that. And then the next year he loses 5 speed, 5 acceleration, his player recognition goes down, and then he's just blowing coverage left and right. Yeah. And where can you put him? You put it at safety, but then at that point, what the hell does that have to do with anything? Now you just got a worse safety back there.
It's also a thing where I think they should go more on your experience than your age. So, for example, if you draft somebody at 23, if they've only played 6 years in the league and they're 29, they should not drop at the same rate as somebody who was drafted at 21, who was in their almost 10th year. So I think, technically your body should be fresher at 23, so you don't have as much experience, you haven't been hit as much, so I think your lifespan per se should extend longer in the league, instead of drafting older players being an instant downside where you're I'm 5 years in, he's going to be useless.
Yeah, because we all know if you've done a franchise, you've done the draft. If you have 2 players
that are older.
Yeah, if you have two guys that are the same, unless they're a quarterback, you're drafting the younger guy.
Yeah.
99 times out of 100. The only time is if you get like a freakish athlete quarterback, and then it's like,
No, I think
yeah, you can make up with it.
I think the oldest person on my entire team right now in my franchise is 27 years old.
Yeah, the oldest player I've ever drafted was 24, and I regretted it immediately because it was a cornerback.
4 years later, he was useless.
Yeah, it was a cornerback, and 4 years later, he was bad. That was the first time I was experienced. Yeah, I experienced that, and it was a bad decision.
Yeah, so I would like to wrap that up. I would like to see off-season training camp in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's one you can play, or whether it's one they do automatically as a step, and you guys just develop in the off-season. But I think the off-season should show more realism to where players are actually getting better in the off-season. They're not just being stagnant or getting worse because they're older.
Yeah, even if the training camp was part of like the proving that like the older players can still play. Like if you perform really well in the drills, maybe like maybe he still declines a little bit. Maybe he just doesn't decline as fast.
But you can kind of fight back with a little bit.
Yeah, you can like fight back the aging. Like, and maybe during the season you'll get your points up. You maybe be able to take some of that age back. But
Yeah. So the next one for me is. This is something that I think they're probably a few years away from actually being able to figure out, because even real GMs are kind of still figuring this out, in my opinion. But I would like to see more realistic contracts.
Oh, God, yeah.
So,
not like too realistic, but...
Well,
yeah.
The one thing is every contract in Madden is backloaded. So, every contract, the first couple of years, you don't pay them that much. But the last few years, you're getting screwed. You're paying them absurd amounts of money. And...
Yep.
So, it is also the opposite way with guarantees. Like, the first few years, there's no way you can cut that player because there's so much in guarantees. But the last few years, you can cut them a lot easier because their salary's higher, but the guarantees are lower.
Mm-hmm.
In real life, that's not the way it works. In real life, they can do it the exact opposite, actually, where they front-load the contract and pay them all the money up front. Similar to Aaron Rodgers right now, they owe Aaron Rodgers no money, which is part of the reason all this is going down in Green Bay.
Yeah, didn't he get like $78 million or something like that his first year
when
he signed that extension?
First 2 years, yeah.
Yeah, it was something ridiculous, some ridiculous amount of money. It was just like, yeah, you got that all up front, so that way we could be good in the future.
Yeah, and that's something that you should, when you're world building and team building in Madden, you should be able to front load contracts like that, to where when you send an offer to a player, you should be able to adjust the amount of money on each year, so that you can say, hey, I'm sending this to you, and if they agree with it, they agree with it. If they don't, they don't. But you can kind of do it where, okay, we like I've done it myself. 2 years ago on my Madden franchise, I had $118 million in cap room. Right now, I have $68,000 in cap room. Now, there were some contracts back then that I probably could have front-loaded and paid them when I had the cap room, and then now I could save and still have cap room if I would have done the contracts that way. But that's not the way the game works. So any players that I wanted to retain, I had to sign the massive deals right then, and now it's killing me 3 years later.
Yeah, the worst is when you start, like when you start a franchise, typically you'll have 5-6 rookies on your team that maybe 4 of them are viable starters.
Yeah.
And over time, you'll maybe you'll draft, maybe you'll trade for a couple of younger guys. That happens. We all want to trade for the the new thing, and in 4 years they're all wanting re-ups. They all want a new contract. Yeah. And that sounds great. Then you're just you're pushing that into the future. But if you're like either one of us, and you'll do a franchise for over a decade in the game, your contracts start to kick your ass.
Oh yeah, you start to having to cut a lot of players that you built your team with, which is, I mean, it's realistic. Players have to get cut all the time. But it's still something where I feel like if they could structure contracts the way they are in real life, you could avoid that and keep guys that are more important and make the decision to be like, okay, this guy I can front load the contract, this guy I can back load the contract, and this guy is just not worth signing. And a bigger part, I'm not really worried about the contracts as much. I would like to see a restructure being available.
I believe they have that. I wish they had that.
They did. I was doing it.
Yeah. There was. Oh yeah.
I was restructuring the contracts. Yeah. So back in Madden 19, I would restructure contracts for older players to make it more realistic to free up cap room because they don't have an option to do that. So they should have an option.
Something like that.
Yeah, they should have an option where when you're going throughout the season, because now, like week 3 of the season, they will have an option to be like, hey, re-sign this guy, his contract's ending. They should have an option where once a player hits a certain age, and like let's say a guy's 27 years old, and he's a superstar for you. He's like a 5-time Pro Bowler in all this, and you want to keep him on the team. So you signed him to a 6-year deal. Well, say 4 years into his deal, his production's dropped, he's 31 years old, but you still owe him, once again, because the contracts are backloaded, you still owe him like $68 million over the next 2 years. You should be able to restructure that contract to free up cap space and be able to keep him. And that's
we'll be able to give as much money that first year and get upgraded him the second if you want.
Yeah, you could. That's something they do all the time in real life. Like these GMs will make these long-term commitments, and then once they get to the last couple of years of those commitments, they restructure so they can free up cap room on the back end so they can keep these players and have money to sign other players. And once again, like I said, I know this is 4 or 5 years down the line probably before Madden can get this shit figured out. So this is kind of bottom of the totem pole. But it's something that I would like to see because it will add more immersion to the game, more realism, to where if you can kind of custom design these contracts to fit the way you want and still have positive and negative feedback from the players going, okay, then you can get feedback on particular aspects of the contract. So when you send an offer, they're not like, oh, I'm not happy with the bonus or whatever. So where you can be like, okay, here's the contract, and they'd be like, okay, well, I like it, but year 3 you're paying me like nothing. Like, what the hell? And then you can kind of fix it and balance it more and try to get them, instead of it being like a two-week thing where you send them a contract, they say, I don't like the bonus, so you increase the bonus, and then they say, I'm going to sign somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, well, you didn't give me any time to try to fix that, so I think that should be, an option to where it's more realistic and you can kind of get it taken care of both on the front end and the back end. So.
Okay, this is an extremely minor thing, but can they please make contracts, the contracts that people ask for, be based off production and overall? Because I hate it when you get like a second string defensive tackle or something like that, who maybe he's got like 3 sacks and 20 tackles that year. He doesn't perform much. Maybe you're like a 3-4 scheme or something like that, so he doesn't see the field that often. But that guy, he's 25 years old and he thinks he wants everything, and he wants a $15 million a year contract when he's definitely not worth it. It's a little minor gripe, but it gets really annoying.
That one is minor. The thing that bothers me, they should take the age into consideration more.
Yeah, kind of all of it, an all-around system.
For example, I just had a receiver in my franchise. He was 29 years old. I wanted to re-sign him. I didn't care about the money because he wanted like $16 million a year. I didn't care to spend the money. He wanted a 5-year contract at 29. I wasn't willing to give it to him. I tried to send him a 2-year deal with even more money per year. He denied it and went on somewhere else. But it should be something where at that age you should be able to realize as a CPU, like, hey, he's up there in age. He's been with the team for 8 years.
His overall's about to regress, as we mentioned earlier.
If it hasn't already.
Yep.
So it's just like, he might have had a good year last year, but I'm not willing to commit 5 years to him. And there might be some team that is, but even in Madden, most of these teams, chances are he's going to want that 5-year deal. He's going to go through free agency. No team's going to sign him. He's going to get signed to a 1-year deal at the beginning of the year because nobody wants to sign a 29-year-old to a 5-year deal. So, but yeah, contracts is something that I would like to see, but I'm not holding my breath on that one, and it's not something I'm necessarily requiring to be taken care of right away because I feel like it's something that's not ready for right now.
I want to say one thing.
What?
I don't know if this is on your list, but I hope it is. Nerf defensive linemen. Nerf them, please. And Cameron Jordan. Dan? Cameron Jordan especially. They got breaks the sack record in every Madden game I've ever played.
Yes, Cameron Jordan is broken in Madden.
I don't understand it. He just does it. Maybe it's just on all Madden.
He's a really good player, though. So
that's what I've always played. We've always played on all Madden. And he always breaks the sack record the first year. Now, granted, eventually we will as well. Like, we will have like a season where we get like 28 or something. But we've legitimately had seasons where halfway through the season he's got 19 sacks. It's like, what the hell, man?
Yeah.
The main reason I was trying to get to that is defensive linemen kind of get a little ridiculous in the game. Like, 2 years ago when the Rams had Ndamukong Suh, Aaron Donald, Brockers, you could not play against them if you did not have linemen over 95 overall. Your linemen would just get steamrolled every single play, and I have no idea why. You pinch in inside, didn't matter. You try to slant towards them, didn't matter. You run on that side, they're tackling 3 people to get to you.
Well, I can tell you, I don't have anything gameplay related on my list. Because I feel like for the most part the gameplay is fine. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 6 or a 7. Like, it's not the worst part. I feel like I'm not one of those idiots that's like, oh my god, you know, ESPN NFL 2K5 is the best gameplay ever. It's even better than Madden 21. No, it's not. You're a fucking idiot. The graphics look like shit. The helmet cam was dumb, and SportsCenter was redundant after one season.
Yeah, it's not like it's a necessary like immediate change. I think that you're trying to go for the more broader changes. I'm just thinking when you're playing the game, one of the things that gets really annoying real fast is what you were saying earlier about how sometimes you were talking about the challenges and sometimes a lineman will just go right through and get sack your quarterback and nothing you can do about it. Well, he's in the backfield immediately. I've seen it where the center will snap and the defensive tackle immediately just runs right by him and the center doesn't even touch him.
It happens, yeah.
It gets annoying. Maybe just buff O-line, I don't know.
Well, it could be, and also that's something that you can fix with sliders. I've experimented with sliders a lot more in the last 2 Madden games because, like, for example, when we started Madden 19, it was so broken playing on all Madden, and I played on all Madden for 15 years.
Yep.
It's always been the difficulty I play on. And all Madden's not difficult, but it was little things about all Madden that was so skewed. I mean, penalties I always change because penalties are wild if you don't fix the sliders.
Yeah, it's like every 2 seconds.
Yeah. But it was little things that were really wildly unnerfed and other things that were very easy. So I had to kind of fix it like, oh, you can run the ball wild, but every pass you throw is either picked or swatted. Okay, so turn down, defensive reaction time a little bit, turn down running a little bit so you're not running all over them. And I mean, you have to find a happy medium. And there's lots of guys that you can go download sliders now. Lots of guys that are on the same boat. They, hey, we like all Madden, we like the difficulty, we like the AI. For me, it's the kicking because I cannot play on a slower kick. It's fucking messing my brain up.
Yeah, it messes my up too.
But all those little things, you can like those, but you don't have to deal with all the same bullshit that comes with all Madden. Like, oh yeah, my guy has the fucking reaction time with Dale Earnhardt. Like, he can, fucking pick the ball off. Damn it, the Angels lost. He can pick the ball off, every time the ball's thrown. Or, I mean, as you said, linebackers jump 10 feet in the air. And I've got the sliders turned down on that too, and they still do it. So that's just Madden bullshit. But
yeah, it's one of those things, like, obviously at all Madden, you're expecting a harder level of play. And that's what we... That's we're basing most of, like, our... If we're doing any gameplay stuff, it's going to be based off of that.
Yeah.
Because, I'm sorry, Rookie Pro, those are joke difficulties. They're, like, not difficult in the slightest. All Pro has a little bit of more of a skill gap.
All Pro is a stepping stone. Yeah. I will usually do at least the first half of my first year on All Pro.
Sometimes you want to get a feel for the game, especially like if I was to go back to play Madden right now, I haven't played it in about 2 years.
You'd start on All Pro.
I would start on All Pro and then I go right to All Madden.
Yeah.
And it's just when you play on All Madden, sometimes there's just some jank, some bullshit that happens that nobody wants to deal with. Nobody wants their cornerbacks. Nobody wants, when you're trying to throw over a cornerback and you have 3 yards separation, him to twist around in midair with no knowledge of that ball being there, jump up in there and catch the ball. It's like he has no knowledge the ball was going to be there. There's no logic for him to do that. He's just doing it on a whim.
Yeah, and that's little things they have to fix in gameplay. But as I said, overall, I can say the gameplay is solid enough to where it's not a constant complaint for me. I mean, there was one game, I think it was Madden 16, that I got fed up and I quit the franchise because it got to a point where it was literally so broken. Like, it was game after game after game. There was something just absolutely ridiculous happening. I think that was the game where defensive linemen were really
they were just picking it like crazy. One would go for the sack, and they were like the ball would go up in the air, and there'd be another one right there to catch it.
Yeah, I think it
happened like 3 times in a game, and I stopped playing as well.
Yeah, I think that was Madden 16 where the defensive linemen were really broken with picks. It happens on a rare occasion now, but that's why I don't really complain about gameplay too much, because they do tend to attend to the gameplay issues on a minor basis, but it's not perfect.
It should be updates during the game's life cycle instead of the next game. That's my gripe with it mainly.
Yeah, but so anyway, we're already hitting the hour mark here, so I'm going to go ahead and move on.
Lightning round.
Yeah, well, the next thing should be quick, but this is once again something very small, and I don't really foresee it in the next couple years, but maybe 3 or 4 years down the line. I would like to see some sort of stadium customization / stadium designer. They literally just put one in MLB The Show 21 on the next gen consoles, like my PS5. Flex that I have a PS5, but they have a stadium designer now where you can put things in the outfield and build a background scenery and a cityscape and all that, and you can design the stadium and upgrade the walls and up and down and all that, and that's something that's really cool. And from what I've heard, it works okay. I mean, it's probably has a few updates to do software wise to where they can fix it, but I would like to see some sort of stadium customization. If you look at the older Madden games, they had a very, very bare bones version of stadium customization. You'd be like, oh, you have these 4 choices for end zone walls.
And there was always 2 that were better because they had higher capacity, so you always wanted the attendance and all that.
If you want a dome, we're gonna give you the choice of these 4 domes, but I'd like to see like kind of more of like a MLB The Show kind of deal where, and I don't want, I'll say it now, I don't want anybody to mess with current stadiums. Like, I don't want you to be able to take over the Packers and tear down Lambeau and build this fucking big extravagant stadium. I think it should only be, well,
if you relocate or if
you relocate or if you decide to completely rebuild. So let me rephrase that. You can tear down Lambeau, but you can't adjust Lambeau. So it's not going to be Lambeau Field anymore if you're gonna go there. So I don't think you should be able to take over Raymond James and be like, you know what, I don't want the pirate ship anymore and get rid of it.
That's sacrilege right there, dude.
Exactly.
Sacrilege.
But, I don't think you should be able to touch current stadiums. And I'm sure those stadiums probably have some sort of legal action where you can't actually adjust them in game. But I think if you want to relocate to another city, or if you just want to rebuild and tear down your stadium and pull a Houston Texans and build a stadium right next door, or in Atlanta, Georgia Dome is right next door to the new stadium. If you want to build a brand new stadium and tear down the old one, then go ahead and do it. And then at that point, you should be able to have like a stadium designer where you can customize and get all these options, and you can kind of raise the sides and expand things and change lights and graphic boards and all that. I mean, once again, I see it being 2 or 3 years away, but it's something super minor, but it's something that I would like to see because I think it would kind of give you more of like a, hey, this is my stadium and my team. I feel kind of cool playing in my own stadium. As to where now if you relocate, they give you like bare bones, like, oh, you can get like this. It's almost like a college bowl stadium, so it looks like a big, almost like the Rose Bowl or the Big House. They give you like this big bowl-shaped stadium, or you can get like generic Dome 1, generic Dome 3. Like, they give you these choices, but nothing's customizable about it. You're just getting to choose. They tell you how much the stadium costs and what amenities it comes with, and that's about it. So there's no like feeling like, oh, this is mine. No, this is the same fucking stadium that 600,000 other people that have picked this team have selected. So, but yeah, stadium designer I think would be cool, and I think the way it's been implemented in MLB The Show shows that it's possible. So they just need to put the work in the future. But as I said, similar to contract stuff, I think that's you can push that in the back burner for another 3 or 4 years from now, and fix the more at hand problems first. So
it would only be the only problem with that. It would kind of be more difficult, I think, in a baseball stadium, because in a baseball stadium there's areas, there's like the batter's eye. You can't put anything there for a reason. There's there in a lot of parks isn't grandstands in the very back. In some areas you can do have features in those areas, which I understand makes sense why you get like a skyscraper in the right next to the outfield, which would be great. But like, you obviously wouldn't be able to do that with the dome. Domes would have to be like more minor customizations, like billboards and like obviously the ads are still going to be there that that the game wants. Maybe dome color, stuff like that.
Well,
do you want like an end zone like the New England Patriots, where you don't technically have a the end zone portion right there, what the old horseshoe for Ohio State used to have before they added the end zone stands?
Well, I think about little stuff like, if anybody remembers, if you play Blitz the League back from 2006, and you played deep enough into the season, you can actually get a stadium where at the end zone there's a waterfall. It's like a waterfall, they have a fountain and stuff. Like, little things like that would be so unique and cool to put like in your stadium. Be like, oh, I'm gonna put this. Or you can be fucking ridiculous like Shad Khan and be like, I'm gonna put swimming pools in my stadium. Like, you can add little things to make your stadium unique. Obviously, you're gonna have a selection of options, so everybody will eventually pick the same thing. Like I'm inevitably gonna pick a stadium layout that's similar to John in Ohio, but at least you can kind of feel unique about your stadium, so that if you're playing online, for example, and you're the home team, and some random guy's going to play at your stadium on a franchise or something, you can be like, haha, you're in my stadium. Like, nice. I built this is kind of cool. And you could even have it to where, hey, if you build a new stadium, you become part of the host selection for the Super Bowl. So now you can be, okay, my stadium's hosting the Super Bowl. That's pretty cool. So
it's a minor thing, but it's one of those things that kind of adds to the franchise and the world building of the league. Yeah. It makes sense. I liked it. And it's just fun. It's fun. Nothing wrong with it.
So, the next thing I'm going to talk about, we already kind of touched on, so it's not necessarily too much conversation that needs to happen, but it's persuasion for retirements of players. So, you brought it up earlier, mentioning that it was in Madden already, but it really hasn't been.
I feel like there was something like that, or maybe it's just my college from playing college.
I think it was college you're thinking of. So I would like to see something persuasion-wise when it comes to players leaving. Because it's similar to what we touched on earlier. When players hit a certain age, the game kind of considers them useless. It's almost like they want to force them into retirement. They start lowering their overall, lowering all their attributes and stats. And
regardless of what you do.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how good they are, how many Pro Bowls they make and all that.
Or Cassandra.
Yeah. And, but the game will basically try to force them out. And obviously guys like, Tom Brady and Terrence Newman and Jerry Rice, these are guys that have played 39, 40 plus, that have kind of broken that mold and said, hey, just because I'm 35 doesn't mean my career is even close to over yet.
When you're still playing well, you should still be able to play. It shouldn't be automatically forced to retire. You should be able to talk to the player and be like, hey, you want to come back, maybe we'll up your contract, maybe something like that. Just something. Yeah. You gotta have some sort of choice.
Yeah. I would like to see it to where, if you have, like, for example, like I was in a situation where I had a guy who was very close to breaking Jerry Rice's receiving records. And then at the age of 39, he called it quits, which, give him credit, 39 for wide receiver. I'm surprised Matt let him play that long. But I drafted him at 23, so that was the issue. He lost a couple of years on the front end. But, yeah, I would like to see it to where, if you get a guy who's still putting up production numbers and he's contemplating retirement, as according to the game at least, there should be an option where it'll, show you, okay, he's red, meaning he really wants to retire, or he's orange, yeah, he's kind of considering retirement, or yellow, okay, he could be talked back, or he's green, he really doesn't want to retire, so he can be easily persuaded to come back. And be similar to NCAA, NCAA 14 being the newest released, where, in NCAA 14, if somebody was going to go to the NFL draft and declare, you could be like, hey, I promise we're going to win a national championship. I promise I can, upgrade you from being a second-round prospect to a first-round prospect. And you can kind of promise all these things, and then they could be like, yeah, coach, I'm going to come back, or, you know what, I think the NFL is best for me. And it could be a very similar, you can almost copy-paste the formula into a Madden game. And when a guy's going to retire at 37 years old, you could be like, yeah, but let's give it one more run, bud. We try to win a Super Bowl for you. Or you're so close to breaking a record. Well, let's go break that record. There should be things that apply to that player that you can kind of try to convince them with. And if they're dead set on being red and you can't convince them no matter what, then so be it. No, but if there's somebody that's still putting up productive numbers, and you would like to bring them back to the team, whether it's because you want to get them some sort of legacy or breaking a record, or whether it's because they're still actually a huge part of your team and you don't want to lose them, either way you should be able to convince them and be like, hey, come back one more year, I'll pay you this much money guaranteed, and let's try to make another run of the Super Bowl, let's try to get you this NFL record, let's try to do this. And I think that should be an option. You should have some sort of persuasion. You should have some sort of say-so on whether your player retires, instead of just the season ending and you seeing a list of guys who retired and you're like, oh, fuck, that guy was 32 years old. Why'd he retire?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the two players I think of right now, outside quarterbacks and kickers and stuff like that, is I think of Andrew Whitworth and Larry Fitzgerald. Whitworth, They both said the reason they want to play is because they want to win a championship. Larry Fitzgerald said that's the only reason he's still playing.
Yeah.
And granted, he might retire. He hasn't made up his mind, and they said they're going to give him his time.
You could convince him.
Please come back. I'm a favorite player in the league that's not named Tom Brady. So yeah.
I would like to see there be some option where you can have, because like right now they have a trait as a coach where you can have, it's a retirement influence, but there's nothing you can actually there's no way you can actually use that trait. Like it's not like you can upgrade the retirement influence trait and then there's an option that says, hey, these players are contemplating retirement, and then you can use that influence to keep them. Like it gives you a head start.
It's more like a passive thing, and I get it, but
yeah, I just think it could be something where instead of getting an option or getting a note right away in the first week of the offseason that says these players are retiring, you can get a note that says, hey, you have 3 players contemplating retirement. And then you can kind of be like, okay, let me look. Okay, this guy, he's 39 years old. He's declined. He's not really a starter anymore. I'm going to let him go. Okay, this guy was actually a huge part of the offense last year, the huge part of the defense. He's only 36. I don't know why he's trying to retire right now. Let me try to bring him back for another year. And I think that's something that can kind of make the game more realistic because not everybody's just ready to retire whenever the game said so. I had a running back in Madden 19 who literally I started him for 7 years, and at the age of 31, he called it quits for no reason, out of the blue. And I was like, okay, there goes my starting running back. He just retired. And I have no idea why, but the game just decided it was time for him to go. And
it's also another thing, like, if they were to broaden it up, if your team's a Super Bowl contending team, like clearly, obviously Super Bowl contending team, most players don't want to retire when you're playing on a good team.
Yeah, that's the other thing, yeah.
Like, what was it? Keith Talib didn't want to retire when he was on the Rams because he was good, and then he went to the Dolphins, didn't play because he was injured, and then he retired.
Well, at the same time, it should also be something where, I mean, you could look at it the other way too. If you're on a good team and you win a Super Bowl, some people are like, "Hey, I've done what I need to do. I'm done."
And it's your Tom Brady, and then you go to another team and you win a Super Bowl, and you try to win another, and you win he's probably going to win like 14 of them.
Yeah. I will say I did forget to mention something earlier when I was talking about contracts, so I'll bring it back real quick. Bring holdouts back.
Oh, holdouts were fun.
Yeah, holdouts are gone. There's not been a holdout in a Madden game, I don't know, probably at least 5 or 6 years. I remember playing Madden 05, and I would have a wide receiver, beginning of the year, they'd be like, hey, this player's holding out, he wants a new contract. Now, my little 11-year-old brain at the time didn't know what the fuck that meant, so he just held out the whole year, and I didn't re-sign him. But they should bring holdouts back to where you can get a week 1 in the preseason notification that says, hey, this guy's contract's ending next year or whatever. He would like to restructure. He's not going to play unless you restructure. And that should be something where you can make that choice to be like, okay, do I resign this guy? Do I try to trade him because we can't seem to, mend the fences here? So yeah, bring holdouts back. I'm not going to get too much into that, but I forgot to mention earlier when I was talking about contracts, and I made a note of it and just completely blew over it.
Very minor thing. Thing.
They
only happen like a couple times a year.
Bringing holdouts back is something that could actually implement right away instead of the contract restructuring. That could probably take a few years. Holdouts you can bring back almost immediately. Like, hey, if we can't figure it out, I'm holding out. So.
Yeah, if he's in the last year of his deal and you haven't made any effort, maybe he just says whatever.
Or even if he's not in the llast year of his deal and he feels like he's outplayed his contract.
Maybe you try to franchise tag him for a year and he says no. And he just holds out. He just sits there.
Yeah.
It's a minor thing.
So this next one is kind of, I feel like this is doable because I'm not going to dive into commentary too much. Yes, everybody knows the commentary for the most part, they kind of recycle it. Usually it goes
walk-off touchdown beyond belief.
Yeah, usually they recycle the commentary for, it's just like 3-year spans. They'll recycle it. I mean, they'll add new player names in and backstory if you play on like Play Now and whatnot. But for the most part, if you're playing franchise, commentary is recycled. They just add new player names and whatnot. You'll hear the exact same things when a big play happens, when a field goal's missed, when a first down happens or whatever. You'll hear Charles Davis say the same shit he always says.
Yeah. The big one was, what was it? It's a notable example from our childhood. In Madden 2009, 10, 11, and 12, there was always the Tom Brady one, where every fucking year, at the start of the year, they'd talk about how Tom Brady was injured in 2008. Every fucking year.
Oh, yeah.
It got really annoying. Because I play as the Patriots, so you'd hear it every fucking game. It's a little tedious thing, but it's annoying.
Yeah, I would like to see. I'm not going to get too much. I'm not going to sit here and say the commentary needs to be overhauled or anything. I do think they should change the commentary team every couple of years to keep it fresh. But at the same time, from what John Madden said himself, it's a very undesirable job. Because you sit there for days and days and days upon days recording the same lines with a different player name. Like, oh, and Walker on the tackle, Warner on the tackle. It's the same thing over and over again, just changing a name. So I understand that could be a very tedious job that probably isn't desirable for a lot of people. What I want to see is situational commentary more important in games. So, like, when big playoff moments are happening, I want to hear, like, commentary get more hyped up and more, kind of enthralled in what's happening, instead of it just kind of being the same generic commentary you hear week 15 to week, wild card or NFC Championship game or something like that. And yes, they'll make little pre-game notes about, it's the NFC Championship game, a game away from the Super Bowl, or when you come into the half, they'll be like, we're 1 half away from deciding who's going to the Super Bowl. But for the most part, the actual play-to-play commentary is the exact same. It's very bare bones. And I think that, once again, you could compile this with what I said at the beginning, getting playoff stats. If a player has a really good playoff history, the game can acknowledge that and be like, they could pull up if it's that quarterback, for example, if it's his first game of the season in the postseason, you can pull up his previous season's playoff stats and be like, last year, he really killed it and led the team to a Super Bowl win. Or you can pull up the opposite and be like, he's really struggled in the postseason. Maybe he can get it, turned around. Yeah, like, that's something that I feel like it just adds a little more immersion to the playoffs when it's not the same bare bones commentary. It's even as bad to the point where, when you run up the score, for example, there's a common line that gets said in the regular season that's, you have to think, maybe it's coming to a playoff, maybe it's going to be a tiebreaker and it has to go to points. I've heard it in the playoffs, and it's a championship game. You'll blow them out, and they will say the same thing, even though you're already in the playoffs. But the commentary is recycled, so they use the same thing. So, I think that they could freshen it up in the playoffs itself, so that the commentary is kind of newer. I said it years ago to him, I think commentary should be different for every major primetime game. I think a Monday night should have 2 different guys. Sunday night should have... I'm not saying it has to be the real-life crews, but I think it would kind of make it feel...
want Monday Night Football screws, Darian, so that's definitely don't want that.
But I think it could kind of make the game feel a little more fresh if you're not hearing the same 2 guys over and over again. If you switch it up and pass it off to 2 other guys, and 2 other guys... That way, if you're playing on Thursday Night Football, you're hearing this guy, and if you're playing on a Sunday, you're hearing these 2. And I think it kind of make the game a little bit more realistic when the commentary comes to it. But yeah, Super Bowl playoffs, I would love to see new commentary that's specific to the situations you're in.
For commentators, either bring Al Michaels back in some way, shape, or form, or get Mike Tirico in there because they are my 2 favorite commentators by far.
You don't want Joe Buck?
Oh, yeah, Joe Buck, the least intriguing. He's my least favorite.
How about the guy who's your favorite guy?
Oh, my God.
Fucking...
And he scores!
The last play of the game.
Unbelievable.
The Titans win. The Titans win.
It's 2 different plays right there, but...
that guy, the same guy, though. He's amazing with his cracked voice.
One's Michigan State, Michigan block punt, and the other one's
Titans
the
Chiefs
Titans-Chiefs playoff game.
Yeah,
the guy's voice cracks more than anybody, and I love it. I love it.
But playoffs, I would like to see a little bit more detail when it comes to the commentary. I would also like to see kind of... Like, I'm not going to say I want to see a new Super Bowl celebration. Everybody wants to see that because they recycle the same Super Bowl celebrations for years on end. But I'd like to see some kind of bigger celebrations and bigger animations for the other games, too. Like, if you win a wild card game, it's a big deal. You're moving on. So I would see the guys kind of get amped up and
storm the field or something like that after the game.
And same thing like NFC Championship game, especially if you're like a team that hasn't been to Super Bowl like the Lions. If you're controlling the Lions in the franchise and you win the NFC Championship game, you should see your guys amped up, and you should see commentary that reflects that too. It'd be like, the Lions, for the first time ever, are going to a Super Bowl, instead of being like, well, the Lions are going to the Super Bowl.
For the first time in Vegas Golden Knights history?
Yeah. So yeah, I think that that's something that they can easily address, because with them recycling so much commentary from year to year, you cannot tell me that Charles Davis and Brandon Godden are short on time. They don't have the time to record some fresh dialogue for the playoffs. I think it could easily be done. It's another thing that they could implement tomorrow and have it set ready for the next game that comes out. So
Yeah, I feel like I know they do a little bit of updates throughout the season. Like if a player that's like a big player who was like, let's say he was undrafted, nobody knows who he really was, and he just blows up in the first couple weeks, and everybody knows him, but his name's like weird. Like if Aguilar hadn't been a first round pick, nobody would know how to help. Nobody would know how the hell to pronounce that name.
Yeah, they'll do things like that, but and it's little things like that. Like they'll put out commentary updates, but most of their commentary updates are either for Ultimate Team or Play Now, or they have that like play the situation thing where you can play along the regular season. They have things like that where they'll improve commentary for that, but it doesn't affect the fucking franchise mode. I also think that they should do what they used to do in college football games, which kind of got them in trouble, when they would record names of college players that nobody could pronounce. And everybody's like, oh, this is kind of a clear like sign that this is who this guy is. They should be able to do that too for the incoming class, especially with name, image, and likeness coming through. I'm not even going to get into that, but I think the draft classes very soon should have the real faces and real names and backstories behind them, because you're going to be able to. But I think, if you have a new guy coming in and he's got an interesting name, a la Clemson's new quarterback, DJ Uiagalelei,
Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah, they should be able to say that name if you happen to draft him 2 years down the line, and they should be like, oh yeah, we knew this guy was coming, so we're gonna go ahead and put his name into the game. That way it can be pronounced. But
no joke though. Please, Al Michaels and Mike Tirico.
Yeah.
One of you two, or both. I'll take both.
Wait, you don't want Tony Romo, man?
Tony Romo was good. I'll take him too.
I don't like Tony Romo. I don't want Tony Romo.
I like Tony Romo, but I liked him. Now he's not a player. He was a good player though. He's pretty good. I want Mike Tirico though. Yeah. If I had a choice.
So we got 3 left here. So one of them is, the next one is, I want to see some either custom soundtracks for the game or some sort of like legend soundtrack. They announced back in, I think it was Madden 25, when they were first bringing back EA tracks, because they didn't have it for a couple years there. And they said, no, it was Madden 15, I think it was. And they said that, they're bringing it back. And the first rumor was it was going to be a compilation of like all the biggest hits from Madden games in history. They didn't do that. They went with a brand new soundtrack when it came out. And I think that that's something they could really capitalize on. Pick songs from, like Madden 03 was the first one to ever have a soundtrack. So pick some songs from Madden 03, pick some songs from Madden 05, pick some songs from Madden 10 and 08, and I'm sure there's some that came in 11, 12, 13 too that I never played really, but were popular songs. But make like this compilation soundtrack that people can listen to and be like, damn, these are some jams. I remember these. Like they kind of take me back.
The music in the games right now, it typically tends to be more like the modern like rap, hip hop, stuff like that.
And if you're not into that, you don't really care. Like there's no variety either. It's not like you'll hear like these 3 like trap songs and then you'll hear like Disturbed. Like they don't have a mix that's very well. It leans heavily towards like urban rap music. And if you're not really into the type of rap music that they put out, it's like me, I've muted the soundtrack for Madden for like the last 3 years. It just doesn't, the artists don't fit me. I don't really care for the music, so I just go with the bare bones soundtrack or whatever composition they have.
And you're over there with the Hall of Fame music and stuff like that.
Yeah. But
God, I was trying to say something, but I can't remember what it is anymore.
But I would like to see them implement something new when it comes to the soundtrack. And I'm sure they could get a partnership with like Spotify or iTunes. They could get a partnership with some sort of big sound mogul and sign some sort of deal to where you can go online, create your own playlist, and somehow import it into Madden so you can listen to your own music and then share those playlists so where other people can be like, damn, you built a really good soundtrack. I want to download that, and you can share it with your files just like you can rosters and everything else.
Yeah, to an extent, like I don't mind too much about the music, but it becomes a little annoying when I'm sure you've noticed this, Darian, how whenever you start the game, it's always the same song the first. It never really changes. I think it pretty much every time it's the same song when you first turn it on. It gets a little annoying hearing the same like 3 songs for one, and it's really annoying when you don't like that genre. Like I've always been an alternative and like rock type of guy. That's what I've always liked. I don't despise that type of music. I'll listen to it. I just don't prefer it. But when it's only catered towards that audience, it kind of just takes away a little bit of it. Because sometimes you're sitting there for 20 minutes updating your roster, doing trades, free agency, stuff like that. And if you're not listening to anything because you'd either mute it, it kind of takes away from that aspect of the game. You want to be able to be immersed. Maybe you don't like all the songs, but maybe you'll like half of them. And it tends to be that I like 1, maybe 2 off the soundtrack nowadays.
Yeah. And
that's kind of not what you're looking for.
Yeah. So, all right, we go to our second to last topic here and we briefly talked about this one already. Actually, I already touched on coaches hiring and whatnot, so this is actually the last topic. So, the last topic here is, in my opinion, the best thing that Madden can do is to stop annual releases.
Yeah.
And this goes... I'm personally against most games that have annual releases because I think that the product loses some quality when these developers are being rushed to put out a game each and every summer, like in Madden's case, each and every August or September, they're expected to put a game out. And I feel like the quality of the product suffers because of that. And even when the product is improved in certain ways, the improvements are so minimal compared to the year prior that everybody criticizes them for it. I feel like if they released Madden 21 this past year, if they skipped Madden 22 and released a Madden 23, you would notice the changes that are in Madden 23 more than you would each year because they had 2 years to make these changes and do all these new improvements to the game, as to where if they're making little improvements year by year, it goes right by the wayside. Nobody even notices really. So I do think that would be a huge thing for them if they could manage to, start doing every 2 or 3 years. And personally, I think 3 years is the best business model, but I know that's just probably too much money they're going to be losing. But I think, you release a game every 3 years, a brand new game every 3 years, and every 2 years release a roster update for $30 or something. It probably could be cheaper, but it's EA, so you're probably going to deal with $29.99 or something. But... and with that would obviously come new commentary and all that. It'd be like a DLC you have to download. But I think that, releasing a game every 3 years or so and roster updates in between it's the method to go. And I think it's the best thing that would work for them. And it would give them time to implement things like what we've discussed here today. And that way, when I pick up Madden 21 and play it, if they skip Madden 22 and 23 by chance, which would never happen, and Madden 24 comes out, and I pick that up, I'm going to be like, wow, this blows my mind. They've completely changed it. The interface is different. The franchise looks completely different. They've changed commentary teams.
The models are better. The tackling's better.
Yeah.
It's anything.
It's like every year, Madden's out there trying to, advertise E3 and stuff, all these new things in Madden. Everybody goes, oh, same game as last year. Looks the exact same tackle animations. And or they'll be like, oh, like we have 80 new run animations, and everybody will be like, you did that 2 years ago too. Well, I kind of stick up for the developers a little bit, and when saying that when you're releasing a game every year, it can be so difficult to try to impress, because you're basically expected to impress somebody every single year, and it's hard to do. And games that have done the season pass kind of mogul of it. Games like Rainbow Six are the ones that have survived longer because the fans know what they get. The core gameplay hasn't changed. Yeah, he's a Rainbow Six guy.
Got a Rainbow Six
but the core gameplay hasn't changed. Like I'm sure I'm sure that graphics-wise and overall gameplay hasn't changed too much from 2016, whenever Siege started or whatever it was, to now. But, the characters and maps and little add-ons and skins and all that, whatever you have to pay for in the Season Pass, has been added to where the game, even though the core game, the bones of the game is the same, everything on top of it is new and fresh, so you don't feel like you've wasted your money paying for it.
To give you, since you don't really play multiplayer games,
no.
you tend to not. Like every once in a while you'll play something, but it pretty much always he's exclusive single player. I play both. Big Rainbow Six guy, so I can talk a little bit more as the games as a service type model than he can. I also play Smite, stuff like that. Stuff that you got like a small entry price. At least now, like when I bought Rainbow Six, it was like $20. Some people bought it at full price. Some people are getting it for $5 now. When it goes on sale. But like, you get a small investment to start out with, and then you think, oh well, I saved all this money. Well, what am I going to spend it on? Oh well, I see this nice skin over here, and that game is like pro team skins. Oh, you're going to spend money on it, and before you know it, you spent $200 on the game, and you don't even realize it. And that's what the developers want you to do. I feel like that's what the best model that Madden can go down. You buy the game $60 one year. Then, every year you spend, I'd say probably $15-$20 on a year pass, gets new rosters, a little new commentary, stuff like that. Small updates throughout the year. You make a lot of your money back in Ultimate Team, stuff like that.
And you got to think there are guys that probably spend that money on Ultimate Team anyway.
Yeah.
If you're involved in Ultimate Team.
Yeah.
I didn't bring Ultimate Team to talk about here because this is a franchise list, but
if you're talking about games as a service model and stuff like that, some of that should happen. You know what I mean? And like I said, I have more experience with this than you do. A little more experience.
I don't have any experience with this.
Yeah. So I don't know the best way to explain it. You kind of threw me off when you started talking. Oh, what was I even saying there?
You were talking about Ultimate Team, and you said, $15, $20.
Yeah, you spend like $15-$20 on a game. You get your regular updates and stuff like that. Rainbow Six has that. You don't even have to spend money on that game. When a new map comes out, you get it for free. The only thing you have to pay for is if you want a character immediately, or you want to wait 3 weeks. It's a little minor gripes. You want to spend on a skin, you're not. They could do that in this game if you want to play as the Oilers, but not when you're playing as the Titans. Yeah, that'd be fine. If you want it, maybe they make you spend a little bit of money on it. I would prefer if they didn't do that because I kind of like having the historical elements and stuff like that in my game. The roots of a team. Like obviously, I don't want the Ravens to be as the Browns because that's what they used to be.
Well, they can't be anyway because the Browns have their.
I'd like little things like if you could play if you were playing as the Niners and you wanted to play in Candlestick Park instead of Levi Stadium, I'd love that.
Yeah,
that it's a minor gripe, but it's kind of like the baseball games have had it for years, and you can play in old stadiums.
Yeah, or they could do something which I wouldn't say that I would personally buy into it, and some people would consider it a microtransaction situation, but
the core game is the same. But it doesn't matter to me.
You could include things like historical teams. Now, there's some people that have been clamoring that they need to bring back historical teams, and there's some people that would be really pissed if they charge you for it. But at the same time, if you're paying for the game once every 3 years, it's such a minor thing to gripe about. Like if the first year in the first season pass or whatever they release, they say, hey, you can get the 1981 Dallas Cowboys, you can get the 2002 Bucks, you can get all these historical
legendary
teams
and everything. Yeah.
Then you can be like, oh shit, or just like any other game that's got a season pass, you can choose to buy the teams individually, just at a higher price per team. So your season pass could be $30 for the year, or if you wanted to get each one of those teams, they'll charge you $4.99 per historical team that you want to download or whatever. Yeah. And that will give you the choice to hey, I want to play as the 1988 fucking Eagles or whatever, and just choose that team and be able to play as all those players and with the old uniforms and play in Veterans Stadium and do all that kind of shit instead of just having the same bare bones game on a year-to-year basis. If you're doing a 3-year model, kind of, I think it's like I said. I think from the top, I think that's their best move. I know it's never going to happen because EA is a very money-hungry company and they're never going to succumb to that. But You know, that's kind of how it is.
Like some of them are like minor things, but like I don't know why baseball games seem to have it right, but I think it's Out of the Park Baseball is the one. They have historical
rosters. Mobile.
No, I believe that's the PC one. It's kind of like a game manager type game. But that game has it right. You can go back through and you can be like, I want to know what the 2001 Mariners have. And you can see, oh, that was Ichiro's first year, and you can see all this. You can see all this good stuff, and it will have it all in there. You want to start a season and you want to play as just completely as 2001. You can do that. You can just start from there. You can just start with those players, their age, all that. Yeah, you can play. You can see historical stadiums. You can see coaches that maybe have passed by now, but maybe they'll still be on your sideline. Maybe it's the little things that I'd like to have back in the game. Like if I want to play in, I don't care, the ugliest stadium on earth. If I wanted to play in the old, what was it, Qualcomm Stadium before they moved?
Chargers, yeah.
The Chargers old stadium? I want to do that. I
think it's like the San Diego Community Center
keeps
Stadium
changing names.
Now.
But it's the little things. Like I want to be able to play as what I want. And if they're going to do a game as a service model, which I think is the best way they can do this, because the game doesn't change enough from year to year, so like even compared to other games as a service, it's not going to change as much. But if they keep getting the cash flow in constant instead of the once a year and then Ultimate Team, whoever plays that, it'll probably entice them to do more. But I could do it.
Especially since they had such heated backlash when Madden 21 launched. And everybody was so pissed off that it was basically the same bare bones thing that Madden 20 was. I never played Madden 20, and as I said, Madden 21 was bought for me. I had no intention to even buy it, to be honest.
Was it Madden 21 or Madden 20 was the one where somebody zoomed out into the stands and you could see the stands still had the name of the previous game on?
I think it was Madden 21.
It was one of them.
I think at launch, Madden 21 even had some like menus and stuff that still said Madden 20.
Yeah.
And the people were basically like, they literally just copied and pasted this game. Like,
yep. It was just like, oh, here we got new rosters and new overalls, and that's about it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think because of that backlash, it would be smart for them to... It's also smart for them to just take the time to step away for a while. I mean, you've seen games like the Assassin's Creed franchise, for example. I'm not a fan of Assassin's Creed, never have been.
Played a few.
But there was a while there, I think it was when Unity came out. I think that was the first one that came out on the 8th gen. But there was a while there where they had 2 or 3 games in a row that they swung and missed.
It was Unity, Syndicate, and there was like a spin-off or something in the middle.
Yeah, maybe it was Revelations or something, I don't know.
No, Revelations was Ezio, but yeah. And you know what I meant.
I don't know nothing about it. But, they had 2 or 3 in a row where they were a yearly release, and now they're back to being a yearly release model. But they were yearly release, and they were struggling because of it. And so they literally took like an entire year off, and then they came back and released Origins, and a lot of people loved Origins. I know some people that said they didn't like it, but overall, Origins had an overall
better acclaim. People liked it more,
especially compared to the ones that were previously released. And then I heard Odyssey had some good reviews.
And Valhalla, I platinumed that game on PlayStation. It was pretty damn good. It was a good game.
But
I enjoyed it.
So and I've still heard gripes. People say that since they came back to regular releases again, that they're kind of redoing the same thing. Like a lot of people said, Valhalla's combat, from what I heard, was the exact same as like Odyssey's. It was just a different setting and different weapons.
It was a lot of I didn't play Odyssey, but from what I've heard, a lot of the core of the game was the same. It was basically just new powers because got a new skill set, using axes instead of like spears and swords. And no real boat. I think you technically can do boat combat in that game, but there really isn't boat combat at all. Yeah. And it's little minor things. But the game is pretty good, so I enjoyed it.
Yeah, you'll see games like that. They chose to take a year off, and it benefited them when
Greatly.
They came back.
Yep.
Plus, it's a supply and demand thing. So if you take Madden away, and
somebody's gonna want it.
Yeah, exactly. If you take Madden away, like I said, I think it should be 2 or 3 years. But if you take it away just for 1 year, so if you don't release a Madden 22, which I'm sure they will, but if you didn't release a Madden 22 and you just put out a roster update in like the first week of August and said, here it is, we're not releasing Madden 22, and then Madden 23 rolls around, and say E3 of that year, you dropped like a trailer, and I mean gameplay trailers for Madden never do shit for me because usually it's nothing like what the actual game's gonna be. But
Yeah, it's always want to have the highest possible thing. Everything looks amazing, and then you look at it in game, it looks the same it did 4 years ago.
But say instead of releasing some,
shinier.
say instead of releasing some 45-minute gameplay trailer with a rap soundtrack in the background, say instead of doing that, you actually release you have like a 3-minute EA presentation where they show like this is what our franchise AI looks like, the not AI, UI user interface. This is what that looks like. This is some of the stuff you can do. They kind of just give like a hands-on experience for 3 to 10 minutes and kind of show you, and they'd be like, and it's only April, so we still have 4 more months to work on this before the game comes out. I think a lot of people will be pumped. They hadn't had the game in a year. They've been playing on the same, version of the game for a year and a half, 2 years now. And if you show them something new, show them something EA actually put effort in for once, that it would kind of show them like, oh shit, we should probably come back. And I guarantee you your sales that next year would be higher than probably the previous 2 or 3 games combined. Just because people know, hey, they actually put effort in and they actually took a year and stepped back. So whatever title you said it's called, I don't know what they call that formula, but using
it's typically games as a service is what they'll do.
Yeah, going by that model, I think would be the best method. I think most sports games should follow that method, to be honest, and I think any game that does a yearly release should too. Because hell, I mean, I don't play Call of Duty either, but I hear people that complain about that and say that it's basically the same game every year. You're basically paying for new maps and new guns and stuff like that.
And most of the time, the maps they give you are just recycled, or like legend maps, so those are old maps that they just update.
So ultimately, it's like kicking a dead horse here because you could just say the same thing people have said for 20 years. Stop buying the game. If everybody stops buying it, they'll start releasing the same shit. But everybody, it's...
I've bought one since 2017.
But, it's...
2016.
When it comes to Madden, it's like sometimes you have friends that buy it and they are in a franchise mode and you're committed to franchises with these people and you don't want to lose that circle of friends that you play games with, so you buy it. And same thing with like these shooter games like Call of Duty, and I think Battlefield's actually taken a few years back now.
They haven't put one out since Battlefield 5, and that was like 2-3 years ago.
Yeah,
I think I've heard of rumblings that there's a 6th one coming out.
But there was a while there where they were releasing one every year to kind of be in stride with Call of Duty.
Could be wrong.
And the same thing, like people were complaining about those games, but a lot of people buy Call of Duty and stuff because that's what their entire video game is. Like, I know people that only have Call of Duty games. You see their game collection, and it's literally every Call of Duty for the last, 10 years. That's all they play is Call of Duty.
And then you look at mine over there, and I got 3 shooters, and MOBA, a couple... I got Yu-Gi-Oh! Persona. I got everything in there.
Yeah, when you see mine, I've got shit from PlayStation 1 era all the way to
I got, Jak and Daxter and stuff on there as well.
But yeah, anyway. So, basically, EA Tiburon, you guys are 2 hours away in Orlando. I will come to you and not charge you a damn thing. You ain't even got to give me a developer credit on the game. I will come fix this game for you. I will bring my PS2 and my Madden 10 franchise mode, and I will load it up and show you how everything back then is better than what you have now and why you need to go back in time to actually fix the future.
Overall, Madden's still a decent game. It's not like it's a bad game or anything. It's not like
it's not unplayable.
It's not unplayable. There's just so many gripes with the game that I think any football fan that's played the game will be able to tell you.
It's like a lot of things that EA has experienced. There's a level of laziness that gamers can feel, and it's almost like this arrogant attitude that the developer has, and some other developers have done the same thing, and the publisher's done, to where they know that if they put out bare bones, you're still going to buy it. And that's kind of their attitude towards it, like, we don't give a shit because you're still going to come buy it. So, and it kind of makes you feel disrespected as the gamer's perspective. But at the end of the day, we can only hope that videos like this and protests like they had last year and shit like that can all fix Madden going forward. I don't personally expect anything to change next year. I mean, I would hope it would after the outrage they had after Madden 21's launch. But overall, hey, I'll drive 2 hours. I'll help you guys fix the game. All I'm going to request is that you give me a copy of the game for free once it's released so I can tell everybody, hey, dude, this is me. I did it.
Yeah, if they hate you, then, well, they know where to come.
There's no way they would hate me because I'm so much smarter than the people that are working on the game right now. I just can't code.
Smart.
I can show you what to do. I can show you what to code.
Not stupid smart.
Yeah. Smart. But, basically, that's it. This basically concludes the first video game version of this channel. Maybe changing the channel's name in the future. Kind of just depends how long he sticks around. If he's not around for every episode, then I'll retain the name because it's not going to make any sense. But for right now, it's one man, one mic with 2 mics and 2 men. And we'll see you on the next one, guys. Thanks.
It makes sense. I swear.